We need things outside of us to change for us to feel better. So we need the kids to obey, we need the house clean, and then we think we'll feel better. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. All right, we're back. Day 3. We're talking on a Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. How are you doing? I love that we're coming to you every day, almost this week. Well, Monday through Thursday, every day. And today is the third installment of the 3 Vital Decisions Workshop replay that I decided to bring you on the podcast this week. And before you dive in, I just want to let you know that if you haven't listened to Monday or Tuesdays, go back and listen to those first and then come back to today's episode because they build on each other. I can't wait for you to hear all of them. These are the 3 decisions that as a parent, we really need to make if we're going to transition from corrective to connective parenting. And I want that for you so badly. I know what's waiting for you on the other side of corrective parenting. When you move into connective parenting, it's so beautiful. And I want that for every single one of you. So listen to the replay this week and do the challenges I tell you at the end of each one, because it's the action that creates the new behavior, the new habits. We have to take action. So I'm all for learning. I love learning, but take action too so that it translates into real life. All right, let's dive into the third vital decision you need to make to transition from corrective to connective parenting. Let's go. Welcome, everybody. Today, we've made it all the way to the last day of the Connect Method Parenting Workshop. So we've talked about our 2 decisions that we're going to not negatively energize off-track behavior using punishments and rewards and show up just then. Then yesterday, we talked about really proactively, maybe thinking a little bit differently about the way we proactively are connecting with our kids and the impact that can have and how we might be able to tweak it or improve it, or just the impact it has and why it's so important and how that really affects the way that we're able to do this whole thing called Connect Method Parenting. So that's what we've talked about so far. And today we're going to talk about vital decision number 3. And this is huge. It was totally lost on me for a long time. And the decision is, I will practice extreme compassion for myself. And you might be asking yourself, well, Andy, that sounds weird. Like, we're here talking about parenting stuff. Why are we going to be talking about like compassion for myself? What does that have to do with this? And I'm going to backtrack, because when I was first beginning this work, like opening my mind up to other possibilities, I was talking to my coach who I was working with at the time. And I was like, it's not working. I'm totally stuck. And she asked, what are you doing? And I explained how I was really aware of what I was doing and I was evaluating it a lot. And I was really hard on myself, but I was trying to progress and improve everything. I really thought she was going to applaud me for all of my efforts, for how hard I'd been trying. And she said, well, that's never going to work. And I was shocked. I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you have to be gentle with yourself and loving yourself exactly where you are, or you're not going to make any progress. And my jaw literally dropped, because I didn't even consider, and I'm probably an extreme example of this, but I didn't even consider this idea that being gentle with myself and accepting myself where I was and loving myself, even though I'd totally failed that day, was a viable option or something that would even remotely be useful for me. But what I have found in the last 2 decades of being a mom and, just in the last little bit of my life, is that is so critical and important to us progressing. We think being hard on ourselves and critical feedback of ourselves is the way we're going to progress. And we often do it with our kids too, right? We're giving them little hey, lectures and little tips and suggestions. And what I want to offer all of us today is we're going to reevaluate that. What would happen if we were gentle with ourselves instead of hard on ourselves? And that's what we're going to explore. So high level overview from the last 3 days. I hope you're catching the vision. I hope you're seeing your future family. And as you start to implement this, and one of the reasons we're going to talk about the compassion, not that it's important on all levels, but it's especially important because as we start to make shifts and changes, you're going to do perhaps really well for a day, for a week. You're going to have these moments that you're just so excited about the way you're connecting with them and how you didn't yell at them or have a total meltdown when they had a mess or talked back to you or whatever your trigger is, but then you're going to mess up and our nervous systems are going to kick up and we're going to go into fight or flight mode and we're going to switch into those survival instincts. So I want us to prepare for that. I want us to think about this and be really ready for it to happen. In fact, one of the main reasons people don't follow through on their goals is because of this very thing. They set a goal, they start to get some momentum, and then, our brains, all the things are working to keep the old habit alive, the old patterns alive, and we mess up, and then we're hard on ourselves, and we're like, well, I'm just not cut out for this. Maybe I'm just not going to be able to do this. And we start rationalizing why it's not working. And so I want us to just prepare for that and to know that that's going to be a skill we need to learn as we move forward, really with any area of our life, but especially parenting. We really want to connect. We really want to get out of the habit of having to use punishments and rewards and incentives and all of these things to get our kids to want to do things. And it's going to create a lot of discomfort as we go through the process. And our brains are going to want to go back to the old ways. So you're going to mess up, you're going to switch into survival mode, and you're going to know how to overcome that struggle, that mindset of like, you can't do this. We're going to talk about that. And it's going to change everything for ourselves. So let's just visualize. And I want you to think about how it's happened in the past. Your kids are talking back and it feels threatening. For me, when my kids would talk back to me, it would feel like a visceral attack on me and my nervous system would kick up to protect me. So sometimes I would get charged emotionally. Sometimes I would just spin in thoughts about how I had messed up or how they were, they were broken. So subconsciously, I would see my kids and the situation as a threat. And our nervous system, and the reason I want to talk about this is because a lot of times we don't understand, why am I having these big triggers? And if we don't understand why we're having them, then we don't understand how to overcome them or what to do to start to deal with those triggers and those frustrations in a way that's actually going to help you instead of just make it worse. So what's happening is our body, our nervous system is seeing the mess or the talking back as a threat. And we kick into that fight or flight mode. We want to fix these dangerous things, these problematic things. We want them to go away. And sometimes just the emotion of feeling frustrated, our body's like, no, this is a problem. We shouldn't feel this way, right? And so we go into this like protective mode. We might yell or we might flip our lid and flip out inside. And when we're in survival mode, we're not at our best. But here's the thing, when we do that, and if we're aware enough and we're like, I don't want to yell, or I don't want to feel this way, or I can't believe, we're reviewing it, right? Oh, I just lost my cool. So in a way I just I don't like how I feel when my child talks back to me. And then we just beat ourselves up. We're just putting fuel on the fire for our nervous system. So what we want to do is we want to recognize like, oh, I've got into survival mode. My nervous system is kicked in. I'm not at my best. Maybe in the moment we can recognize that, or yesterday night I wasn't at my best, and realize, okay, I was not at my optimal level, right? Because when we go into survival mode, our highest thinking goes offline. So we're not tapped into the best part of ourselves, like the prefrontal cortex, where the logical thinking, where we can think about our thoughts, all of those kinds of awarenesses, all that kind of activity happens in the prefrontal cortex. And when our emotions kick in, which is the limbic system of our brain, floods our body with emotions, then our prefrontal cortex goes down. It's the fight or flight mode, right? It's, oh, you don't need to be thinking very logically right now. You just need to survive. And so higher thinking goes down. We can't tap into that. We can't problem solve. We're in survival mode. We actually distance ourselves from the people we love the most. We aren't our best selves. We judge and compare. And so if we're triggered, we will not be able to make deep, meaningful connections with our kids. So we need to understand the role of the nervous system. So if we understand the role of the nervous system, then we can say, oh, that's just my body trying to protect myself. In that moment, when my nervous system kicked up, that was the best I could do in that moment because of the way my body reacted. Let me get curious about that. Let me learn about that. Let me figure out how I was feeling that way. And this is how we learn, but we do it from a place of curiosity, from a place of compassion, from a place of love and acceptance, not from a place of beating ourselves up and comparing ourselves and fear and worry and frantic mode, survival mode. That's when negative emotions prevent us from connecting with our kids, because we're in that fight or flight mode. So when we haven't realized this, and this is where most of the moms that come with me, that are working with me, either one-on-one, are in some state of survival mode, which is those triggers are happening when the kids are doing something. which is causing their emotions to go up, which is allowing things to start to happen, like disconnection from the kids. And it just starts us on a chain reaction that we don't want to go on, but we don't know what to do. So if we can just say, oh, it's just my body reacting. Oh, look at that. It's so interesting. Let me understand what that trigger is coming from. Let me give myself just compassion and love that that was just what happened right in that moment. Then we start to move forward. That is when we make progress. So when we're in survival mode, you'll want to do anything to get rid of those icky feelings because we start to even feel like those are a threat. So we blame the kids, we blame ourselves, and we need things outside of us to change for us to feel better. So we need the kids to obey, we need the house clean, and then we think we'll feel better. So we were blaming, and maybe we're not using the word blame, but we're waiting for things outside of our control, the situation, our spouse, our partner, our kids, our neighbors, and that doesn't work. And then, like I said, the other option is we blame ourselves. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. That doesn't work either because we're not able to calm ourselves down. And we just are out to try to solve it from a heightened sense. And so it's so important. It's so important that we look inside of ourselves with love and compassion and curiosity so that we can start creating something different for our kids. And initially, it's going to just be us changing. We're not going to be like, well, teach me how to change them so I can feel better. It's like, let me feel better so then I can show up in a way that allows the situation to be more conducive to everybody being successful. So we're kind of turning it on its head. If you'll remember the first day I talked about that example with the boy who couldn't handle recess, and the teachers were like, teach us what to do to fix the boy so he can handle recess. And he's like, he's just not ready yet. And they were in this fight or flight frantic mode, right? Trying to look outside of how to fix this. And then he's like, hey, what if we just taught him some skills in a different environment? And when he was ready, we went outside, right? So this is the switching the if then. It's like, let me create what will help him be successful. Let me calm ourselves down. It's not because he's trying to be disruptive or difficult. He's just not ready. So when we can switch this in our heads, then things start to switch for everybody that's in the environment. It starts with us, and we want to do it in a loving, kind way. So why haven't we gotten this before? I remember thinking this for myself, like asking myself, like, why did I not consider that being gentle and accepting myself would actually help the whole situation? And I think it's because we have false beliefs of what's going to help. We live in this society that really we believe it's the external things that are going to fix the internal problems, right? So we have that kind of baked into just the air, really. We have habits of yelling, of punishing, of incentivizing in a way that's not helping, but we don't know any other way. Or we think we should know better, right? We're just in these habits. I'm smart. Why can't I figure this out? I would always ask myself, like, why didn't I figure this out, right? But this beating ourselves up, saying, I should have done better, or I could have done better, that creates regret and blame and shame. That's what we want to just say, like, oh, that's what I've done in the past. That hasn't been compassion. I haven't been committed to being compassionate with myself or compassionate and accepting myself. And I will say there's a direct correlation. One of the other things that just blew my mind was someone said, the more you love yourself, the more you can love your kids. If you hate yourself, you're going to not be like, that limits the amount of love you can show your kids. And I was like, wow, I want to love my kids unconditionally. So you're saying I can only love them as much as I love myself unconditionally. And so I started working on that because that was so important. It was enough of an incentive for me to say, like, yeah, I'm going to do this because it's important for me to love my kids that much. And it just started this chain reaction where I realized actually everything's better in our life if we can accept and love ourselves. So I know you're here because you want to be a great parent. You want to make changes. You want to show up differently for your kids. And we've been talking over the last couple of days of this new possibility, this new way of being compassionate and firm, of loving and accepting yourself, your kids where they are, and being able to set a limit in a way that's still loving and compassionate. We've talked about that instead of, hey, you either can be authoritative or passive, like, and all loving. It's like, no, not loving and authoritative or all loving and passive. No, let's blend those together. That's not what science is showing us. That's not what studies are showing us. That's not what they're seeing in developmental psychology. There's another way possible to show up for ourselves and our kids, and it permeates every part of our life. We want to stop yelling. We want to stop using consequences in a way to try to fix. Instead, we want to use consequences to serve. And we want to connect more. We want the kids to want to listen to us. We want them to fulfill their potential. And I hope that we all want to have a little bit more fun than we've been having in parenting and have beautiful, good relationships. And that's what all of this stuff is building towards. And that's why it's so important that we make this commitment, this decision to be compassionate with ourselves. It allows us to be more compassionate with our kids. So we've got to stop beating ourselves up. So that's the focus of today. We've got to stop thinking that beating ourselves up is going to change anything. It doesn't work, period, the end. Don't think that beating yourself up or being really hard on yourself or just the brutal facts, right, is going to help. It doesn't. It feels like the right thing to do, the way to solve the problem, the method to fix everything. We think we need to be brutally honest. And this is what I thought too. But what it would cause is spinning. I'd be thinking about myself and how I should have done better. And it would keep me and prevent me from thinking about my kids and how I could help my kids be successful. It doesn't work. It's just a spin. So I'm sure this isn't the first time you've heard it, but I want you to maybe think about it in a way where we're willing to make so much effort to catch ourselves when we are being negative towards ourselves. And our brains are really programmed to find what's not working, to find the problems. The reason it's doing that is because it has been programmed to keep us safe. So we have to find the problems. We have to find what's not working so that we can stay safe. Like if there's bears in the area, we would need to protect ourselves. Like that's a problem. How do we fix that? How do we survive? And so we need to catch it though, because now our brain thinks that the mess in the bedroom and the toothpaste left out and the toys all over the kitchen floor and the crying tantrum, that those are at the severity of problem level as like a wild animal trying to catch us. And so we need to catch our brain as it tries to find all of the problems in our kids and in ourselves and learn to pause that, interrupt that, and be compassionate to ourselves. So beating ourselves up is not going to change anything. And a lot of moms, when I've talked to them about this and we've dug into it, they're like, cognitively, I get that here, right? But why can't I translate that into real life? And what would that actually even create for me if I was able to do that in real life? So, and they've had moments, right, where they have been compassionate toward themselves. And I'm sure you have too, where you've been given yourself the benefit of the doubt. And you're like, I was just doing my best. I was tired. I was maybe sick. But sometimes even that, I was working with a mom just recently. She was sick. She'd been sick for a week. And she was like, but and beating herself up for not having more patience. She's like, I don't know why I'm short. I should be less short. I'm having all these naps because I'm not feeling well. And it's just so interesting. Our brains will attack wherever it can. So we need to catch it. And that's why I'm talking about it for just a minute, because I don't want to just gloss over it, because it's so easy for us to just discount what I'm saying, No, it's okay to beat myself sometimes up. It's okay to be hard and critical of myself sometimes. And I want to say, like, no, it's not that it's not okay. I hate to use that word. It's just not useful. It's not useful to be negative and critical. It's useful to get curious and compassionate and to learn. And there's this beautiful quote by Nelson Mandela. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but he says something like, I never fail. I always learn or grow. I think about that all of the time. That's the difference. When we are beating ourselves up, we're failing and everything's hard and wrong and we were spinning and we're just kind of stuck in this spin of frustration. Like creates like, right? So the more I'm frustrated, the more frustration I'm attracting. And so that's what we're thinking, but that's not actually useful. It doesn't help us learn how to learn and grow from everything. If we're getting curious and compassionate when we have a meltdown with the kids, when the chore chart isn't working again, when we were planning for a vacation and everybody seemed to be completely feeling entitled and being like, we can come at that with curiosity and compassion. And that's when we iterate and learn and grow and become more and more connective, and we're able to implement this. So one of the reasons we've had like blips of it, but haven't been able to consistently implement it is because we don't have the whole method. And I call this the Paris anomaly. I had this experience with my husband where we were poor. So we were just married and he had been asked to go over to England for a business trip. So we were like, oh my gosh, it's so great. So he had his all expenses paid and we found this really cheap ticket. And I joined him at the end and we made this one little day trip to Paris, and we had no kids. I think we had 4 or 5 kids at the time. And we had no kids with us. And it was just ideal. And, we were looking at the Eiffel Tower and we had this huge. If you're new to Connect Method Parenting, I have a great way for you to get started. I created a free course that covers some of the biggest challenges parents are facing and how Connect Method Parenting solves them. In an hour, we're going to talk about why parenting is so hard, how to get your kids to want to listen to you, how to stop yelling and losing your cool, and become that calm, confident, connected parent for good. It's the fastest way to get started using connection as your go-to tool for influencing and impacting your kids. Go to cmp.works/course to get instant access today. Huge fight. And I was so angry. I remember walking, like looking at the Eiffel Tower, and I remember thinking, this is ridiculous. Why are we fighting? We're in this perfect place. And something happened in that moment. Normally and this was like, I was really angry. And normally I would have kind of festered and would have held on to it and then would have gone into the beating, shaming. I'm really good at the shame cycle. I shamed myself and beat myself up for getting so frustrated about it. And honestly, I can't even remember what we were frustrated about, but something happened and it clicked. And I had this I forgave him. I forgave myself. I had so much compassion for myself. And it just it was perfect and magical. And I remember thinking, this is what I always want it to be like, but I didn't know how exactly it all happened. I didn't understand the steps that I had taken myself through on kind of accidentally that day. And so I couldn't intentionally recreate them because I didn't understand exactly what had happened, what the thought process was, why my nervous system had relaxed. I didn't understand any of that. So it took me a long time. And I did start seeking that, recreating that moment. I wanted to consistently recreate that moment, but I didn't know how to in the moment. And for a lot of moms that come in to work with me, that is one of the things. It's like we have bits and pieces of the puzzle. We just don't actually understand maybe the flow of it. And so we have these little moments where we get it right, but then we can't quite figure out how come this time I wasn't able to do it, or what did I even do to get it right? And so we lack the method. And that was certainly the case for me. It took me a long time to piece together all the puzzle pieces to think I can consistently create this or consistently recover if I do have a bad day, because I'm not perfect. So that's been powerful. The being hard on ourselves too, not understanding the huge impact of that it's such a big part of the puzzle that we think we can just still sprinkle it in, but then everything's kind of seasoned with it. It just affects everything. And remember, when emotions are high, when we get triggered, our thinking is low. So when we're judging and blaming our kids, it doesn't work because we get stuck judging. We stay stuck in that instead of getting curious and compassionate. We don't gain understanding. Like I said before, we don't get beyond the surface. We treat our kids like objects. We treat ourselves like objects. We definitely don't give people the benefit of the doubt. In fact, we just see evidence of things to prove us right. Oh yeah, they're really difficult. They're really a hard child, or I'm really impatient. I've had so many moms say, I'm just super impatient. I can never learn to be that. And they've just collected all of this evidence. And this is what happens when we're judging ourselves. We're collecting truckloads of evidence against us. And then our brain is just well, see, no way to get out of this. And we just get stuck in a loop. So we can even start to collect evidence of things that don't really exist. We get hardened. It becomes us versus them, black versus white, good guy syndrome versus, I'm the good guy or they're the good guy or whatever. We just start really compartmentalizing and we alienate our most important relationships from us, and it affects our self-image and confidence and their self-image and confidence. So I wanted to just say that again, because it's so important for us to remember that being hard on ourselves in a critical way is not the solution. And we've got to start catching it. And this is a bad habit that most of us have gotten into for so many different reasons. Another reason that we, haven't been able maybe to consistently implement or be compassionate to ourselves is just the like attracts like. Frustration creates more frustration. Upset creates more upset. It makes us feel terrible when we're being mean to ourselves, but we just kind of get stuck in that loop, rather. We get stuck in the loop. We keep creating what we keep creating. Also, willpower is not enough. So when we're dealing with the nervous system and the subconscious brain and habits and conditioning that's happened to us over a lifetime, we can't just say, okay, great. I get the science. I get all of the studies. I have the evidence. Now I'm just not going to yell anymore, or I'm going to set a limit in a connective way. Thank you for that information. Woo, I'm going to go do it. We can't outthink our subconscious brain. So there's actually a process of retraining our nervous system, of retraining our subconscious brain that comes as we step into compassion and acceptance and awareness. So we have to get present to what's causing us to beat ourselves up. What's the stories that are causing us to think that the mess in the kitchen is what end of the world? Why is it when my child says no that I about flip out, Or what is it about my teenager when they come in from school and they have that attitude that I just want to slap them or something? Like, what are the stories? And we have to dig into that. So one of the reasons a lot of us, we have the best of intentions to stay calm and connected and to not let these things flare up is we think willpower is going to get us there, and it can't get us there. It actually is something we have to dig a little bit deeper and be kind and compassionate with our nervous system, understand our stories, get present with our stories, unpack our stories, get to the root of all of that things for all the things for us. Not like we're not digging down into the deep basement. We don't have to go and discover everything, but just kind of have some awareness and then start navigating and practicing it in real life. And it takes time to create new habits and really retrain our body and how it has those default reactions to things. So that's one of the big missing pieces that a lot of us didn't realize. We think willpower is enough. I'm just going to force myself to do it. I'm going to do a checklist. I'm going to have this routine. And all of those things, like having routines and having clarity, is important, but it's not enough. There's so much more to the path of that. And we dive all into this with my one-on-one clients, like this process of retraining the nervous system and kind of gently moving through the presence, and then we unpack it, and then we navigate it. And it's just this beautiful dance that we play, but we have to be kind and gentle with ourselves or it's not going to happen. Okay. And I already talked about the nervous system. That was the next thing I wanted to talk about. And our subconscious brain, I didn't mention this, but our subconscious brain is so much more powerful than our conscious brain. I've heard 100 times more powerful. I've heard lots of different numbers, but it can process so much more data per second than our conscious brain. I think it's like I don't know the number. It's like 40 versus like 4,000 or 400. I can't remember. I know that's a big difference, but it's a pretty significant difference. And so we really have to be patient as we retrain our mind, our body, our nervous system, and the whole gamut. So that's why being compassionate is so critical and something I don't think it's talked about in a lot of the parenting classes and trainings and all of this, like the psychology, like all the different things I went through. Very few times did they talk about, and I feel like it's so important to talk about how does the mom deal with her stuff so that she can be calm and connected. We would just talk about the behaviors of the child. And so that's why this is like this whole body integrative parenting approach. It's connective approach. It's like, I need to be connected to myself. Maybe I'm disconnected on this, like with my emotions, or maybe I'm not really aware of why I'm getting so triggered. Let's like get connected to ourselves, and then we'll get connected to our kids. And that is why it's like magical, this magical blend, connect method parenting. So what works is that as we're moving forward, we are practicing, and I say the word practice because it is a practice. We're practicing extreme compassion for ourselves. So here's some of the things that when I sum that up, like what does that look like? Because compassion is I think it's such a beautiful word, but what does it really mean in real life? So I have 4 different things that I like to think about when I'm thinking how this applies in real life, this idea of being compassionate. So one is being willing to mess up and not see mess ups as this big, huge problem, to be kind and gentle with our mess ups. Like the Nelson Mandela quote I said before, to see those failures or mess ups. And I do it like this because I think everything is a gift for us to learn and grow from, but our brain's going to see it as a mess up or a failure. So to be able to redefine that and say like, oh, that's just another opportunity for me to see. That's a catalyst for my growth. That's an opportunity for me to see something. So we redefine mess ups as growth opportunities, as catalysts that are going to allow us to move into something better. And we believe we are doing our best no matter what. And we begin to practice the art of giving ourselves the benefit of the doubt. Now, a lot of moms will hear me say this and they'll say, yeah, but I've done better before. And for sure you have, right? We all have moments when we're able to do better and we are like peak performance, and other times when we're sleep deprived or not feeling well, or it's just been a stressful day, or there's something going on at work or a project that we have to finish. And we are a little bit more triggery, right? We get triggered faster. When I say this, that we're doing the very best we can in that moment where we give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, that in that moment, you were doing your best. My girls are in gymnastics, and so we've been watching the Olympic trials lately. And I think anytime I watch athletes, this concept is so clearly shown and illustrated, because you have these athletes that have practiced and in their peak day, like where their peak performance, they are able to hit their skills and land, and with gymnastics, stick their dismounts, which means not taking a step, and be able to execute on these very difficult skills. And they've all had moments where they've done things precisely and perfectly. And then they have competitions or they just have practices where that maybe they're somewhere in between. If their 10 is perfectly, everything was executed perfectly, and 1 is not, like they're fluctuating inside that all of the time based on their confidence and what was yesterday like, and are they sore, and did they eat right, and all of these things, what's happening in their life. And so if we can translate that into our own life, yeah, there are times where we are just doing phenomenal at patience and setting the limits and all of the things, and then there's days where we're not, and I'm doing my best in that moment. And how can I learn maybe what impacted my performance so that I can maybe be at a higher level more of the time, and also just love myself through my weaknesses and through my struggles, right? So most of us don't believe this, but we need to start practicing that we are doing our best in any moment, that we're giving ourselves the benefit of the doubt. We need to practice giving ourselves the benefit of the doubt and gathering evidence for that. Our brain will gather evidence for whatever we tell it to gather evidence for. So if we want to say, like, I'm not a good mom, I'm so impatient, I'm never going to get this right, that's what your brain's going to start seeing and gathering and showing to you. And if you instead flip it, and my challenge to you is to flip that and to say, what am I doing amazing today as a mom? How was that time where I didn't do as well as I would like to do? What are the things that I can improve? Like, what led me to that? How can we give ourselves the benefit of the doubt? When we look for how we've been doing our very best in that moment, when we give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, that is what our brain will collect evidence for. And then we can start to shift from judgment to curiosity. And we can learn to be kind to ourselves and to inspect the harsh thoughts we've been aiming at ourselves, the arrows we've been shooting at ourselves. And we can think, like, I would never say that to another human being. And we can learn to drop that conversation and to learn to be our own best friend. This is so important. And very, very few of us have been taught to be compassionate and kind and to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt and to believe that nothing has gone wrong. That was the best I could do in that moment. And I'm going to learn with curiosity and compassion on how to do better next time. Okay, number 2, what it looks like to actually be compassionate towards ourselves in the moment is to welcome in all of the emotions that come up as being a mom. The positive, joyful, like, oh, I'm so proud of my child. I'm so confident. I'm feeling so happy and connected. And the negative emotions of fear and worry and all of the experience, all of that is part of the human experience. Positive and negative emotions are part of the human experience. And without having the huge gamut, we wouldn't grow and be able to develop or relate to people. And so understanding that positive and negative emotions are part of the human experience without making them mean something has gone wrong is a huge puzzle piece to implementing connect method parenting. I'll give you a quick example. Let's say that you get home and the house is a mess and you feel really upset. And maybe you feel your inner judge, that critical voice in your head, come up and start saying, it shouldn't be this way. You just haven't taught your kids. You failed as a mom. They're going to be lazy slobs and they're never going to get jobs. Like, just start spinning, right? What if we hear that voice come up, and we pause and we got really observant and curious, and we said, oh, there's that thought again, or there's that feeling of dread or fear or worry or upset. And we just noticed and we got curious. This is how we began to navigate this. This is how we began to shift it. First, we're aware, oh, this is just my nervous system. This is just my old habits and patterns thinking that something's terrible. Okay, that's all that is. It's not real. We think all those thoughts in our head are real. They're just thoughts. Our body breathes, our brain thinks. Lots of thoughts. I think they'd say they're up to 30,000 thoughts a day in our brain. A lot of them are just automatically produced or inherited from other people, and we just kind of ruminate on them. So we can totally say, oh, that's just my thought. Like, I'm not going to believe that. There it is again. Oh, it's so interesting that my brain wants to start beating myself up and my kids up again over this mess. So we get really curious, and then we slow down and we say, of course, I'm feeling upset. This is what I've been practicing for 10 years. This is just what happens when my nervous system reacts to a perceived threat of something going on, right? So then we remind ourselves, my body breathes, like I said, and my brain thinks. These are the thoughts and emotions. These are just information. What do I want to do with it? This is how we began to be compassionate with ourselves. Pause the old thinking so that we can implement connect method parenting. Because if we are bringing in all of those old beliefs about ourselves and we're not being compassionate, we're thinking something's wrong with us and we're not able to, like, all of that just makes it very difficult for us to be able to actually implement this with our kids, implement connect method parenting. And I'm so committed to helping moms implement connect method parenting that we have to look at what's going on inside the mom or the dad, the parents, right? So we began to learn to not define ourselves by our emotions. Instead, we refine ourselves using our emotions as information. And so we're welcoming all the emotions in. And here's the thing, the better we get at this, the better we get at being able to welcome all of our children's emotions in, which is huge. I didn't get to go into that nearly as much as I wish I would have, but there's so much around as we're implementing Connect Method Parenting about learning the importance of emotions, that they are the fuel to growing us up, that we have to feel those. And so we need to learn how to welcome them into our life so that we can welcome them in and be a guide for our kids and for them to learn to be healthy emotionally. So the third thing that is so important and what it kind of starts to look like as we practice this extreme compassion for ourselves is that we learn to love whatever comes up in our life, whatever arises. And we begin to be willing to forgive and let go so much faster, let go of the past, let go of the self-judgment. And we are being super honest and compassionate with ourselves. And we're accepting things as they are. We're just saying like, oh, this is what it is right now. What do I want to do? What do I want to intentionally think about this? What do I want to believe? And so this is a powerful skill of what it starts to translate into real life. And then we start to relearn what off-track behavior and really embody this belief of what off-track behavior means from a developmental perspective. And this is like what I was saying, like, oh, when they're frustrated, it means something's not working for them. Oh, it's so interesting. It's so good to know. We start to incorporate all of the beliefs and the findings of developmental psychology and retraining our brains to redefine things that make a huge difference in our ability to show up for our kids and ourselves. And we are getting present all along the way as we're implementing this huge self-compassion, this self-love for ourselves. We're getting present to the subconscious beliefs and stories, and we're gently working on releasing them instead of judging them or fighting against them. So that's kind of what it starts to look like in real life as we get better at implementing this. We're going through, things are happening with the kids, and we're noticing our thoughts, and we're pausing, and we're intentionally creating a different habit, a different reaction to them. And it's beautiful. And we have to be compassionate, loving to ourselves, or it just doesn't happen. We can't be mean and rude to ourselves. Not going to work. So Connect Method Parenting is very intuitive. When we talk about it in a setting like this, it makes so much sense. But to do it in real life can be difficult, like because of all the reasons I've talked about, the strong habits, the cultural beliefs that we think, where we think behavior needs to be fixed. And this idea that we're going to teach kids by incentivizing them or giving them a punishment. And so we're really in this process of retraining ourselves of how we are navigating all of the things that are coming at us. And the reason why this component, this third vital decision we have to make is so critical is because compassion and being gentle with ourselves, it works. It's really that simple. There's more growth and more shifting and changing and transformation. It comes from loving ourselves and loving our kids and meeting ourselves and our children where they are right now, and then allowing the highest part of our thinking and our intuition, all of it to see what we need to do next. What's the next thing? So compassion creates healthy, sustainable change, and it comes from love and acceptance, not from frustration or from judgment or from fear or comparison. All of us want to feel valued and loved. We want to feel safe. We want to feel like someone believes in us. We want to feel seen and heard. Our kids do want to feel that. We want to feel that. And we start by creating it for ourselves. Then we get better and better at creating it for our kids. And self-compassion allows us to drop the judgment and not be afraid of those stories in our head, like, oh, something's terribly wrong with me. It's like, oh, it's just my nervous system. It's just my default habit beliefs. And when we come and we start dropping the judgment, then our nervous system starts to not see things as a threat. And so we're not shifting. It's not as hard to shift. And we don't see the mess ups or the back talk or the tantrums. It calms us down. It puts us in a more peaceful place. And we don't let what other people say hurt us or trigger us, because we're starting to we visualize things, we see things differently, we're interpreting things differently. The more we inspect our own thoughts, the more we develop the skill to release the harshness and the judgment. And so this is huge. We're starting to see situations as neutral. We see emotions and thoughts as passing clouds. They're just like, oh, there's my brain thinking that thought again. That's a habit thought. And we get to decide what we want to keep and what we want to let go. So just to reiterate, there is this huge correlation between how we treat ourselves and how we treat others. So the more love we have for ourselves, the more love we have for our kids. And the more compassion we have for ourselves, the more compassion we have for our kids. So there's one big skill I want to teach you today. And this is my challenge for you today, to become more aware of your own stories and triggers by using what I call the SOS. So the SOS is a really simple tool we can use in the moment to start being more aware and more present to what's happening and to let go of those stories of judgment. So the first S is for stop. So when we feel the negative emotions, we're going to stop. We're going to become present and aware of what's happening, aware of our thoughts and our feelings. And we're going to start to notice, like, oh, what am I believing that's creating these results? We're going to just get present. So when we're about to, we can feel the frustration coming up because the mess is on the floor or the toddler's throwing the tantrum. We're like, okay, I'm going to stop and just feel whatever's happening inside of me for a moment, become a present and aware instead of just going into default mode. And then the O is for open. Then we're going to become very curious. We're going to be gentle and kind and compassionate and open up to those stories that we've been thinking about and unpacking, when things aren't going crazy. And we're going to just sit in that, like, oh, I'm wonder what's happening. I'm open. I'm curious why my brain is doing this again. It's so interesting. In the moment when like the toddler's having the tantrum, sometimes it's just like, okay, I wonder what's going on. I'm open to like possibility, right? But other things that we can do, if we can pause, is we can go on a walk, we can journal, we can do whatever we like, listen to some music, whatever is going to help us get present so that we can inspect and inquire about what is really happening. It's another way. So we stop ourselves from like going into default mode. We open up to like asking ourselves and getting curious about what's going on. And then we stay with the emotions and the thoughts. This is going to be really uncomfortable. We're going to want to just go away, but we're going to stay with it for as long as it takes. We're going to stay compassionate and committed to continuing to navigate this and to like being aware of this. Like, we're okay, I'm going to just stay here. I want to eject. I want to go yell or I want to like just pretend this didn't happen, or whatever it is we typically do as a result of something that's confronting us. Instead, we're just going to stay and just notice it. And we're going to realize that the worst that can happen is an emotion, and we can handle any emotions. They don't kill us. So this is really, really powerful as a first step to start to stop the default program that we have, the default habits that we have been using when things are chaotic with the kids. And we're going to love ourselves no matter what. Deep, clean compassion. We're going to practice having compassion for ourselves, unconditionally loving ourselves, and learning how to love yourself through the change when things are messy. So that's so important. And I know that I went over it quickly, but what I would challenge you is just start trying it out. The next time later today when your toddler has a fit or your teenager pushes back, or you walk into your kids' rooms and it's totally messy and your nervous system kicks in, you can feel the frustration bubbling up. Stop yourself from going into autopilot mode, going down the normal track. Open up to what I say, open up to curiosity, and then stay with it long enough to just see what happens and to feel whatever feels. And to remember, this is a catalyst for your growth. This is helping you see that there's something inside of you that's causing you to feel this way. And I want to understand why that's causing me to feel this way. Why am I getting so upset about the kids' room? Why is this such a big problem? Let's open up to it. And that's when we can shift from judgment to curiosity, judgment towards our kids or ourselves, to compassion for our kids and ourselves. So when you do this, you're going to create something really, really beautiful. You're going to redefine what success is. You're going to start to realize my mistakes don't define me. Relationships trump behavior every time, or messes every time, right? And being present trumps being productive. We're going to learn that unconditional love increases as we get more and more aware. We're going to have less and less conditions on our love. And ironically, but so amazingly, be also able to be so much better at setting those limits and those boundaries. The love increases, and our ability to be consistent and compassionate and firm in what we are trying to create for our family and our kids becomes elevated too. You're going to find yourself being more and more patient. You're going to have kids that can have episodes of meltdowns or whatever, and you're going to be able to trust, like, I can figure this out. I know what to do. This is them working through their emotions and their frustrations. And you're going to just trust life instead of getting stuck in the moment or defining things by like, oh, another meltdown, something's terribly wrong with them, and evidence against yourself, right? You're going to just be patient and trust. And you're going to understand, which I think this is one of the hugest takeaways that we learn as we begin this journey, is understand the power of emotions and how nature really knows what it's doing. I really don't think it's a mistake that we feel all of these emotions. The huge, they call it vibrate, they measure emotions in like vibrations. And so they say this like vibrational, like huge range of vibrations. I think we're supposed to feel all of them. But when we're afraid of what it might feel like when we feel the anger or the hate, we don't understand how to experience it and not let that drive us. So when we know how to process our emotions and we value our emotions and we aren't afraid of our emotions anymore, then we navigate anything that happens in such an empowered way. The emotions are just information. It's part of the experience. And I get to decide what emotion I want to be fueling my actions right now. And you're all like we can create whatever we want. So we understand also as we go down this journey is that we all have stories. It's our brain's job to have stories, to fill in the blanks, to create meaning out of things. And that's just what it's doing. It's trying to create meaning out of the temper tantrum. It's trying to create meaning out of the messes. And I can now just see that. And that's what you're going to be able to do, just see that and say like, oh, there's my brain again, trying to make a big story and meaning out of this mess. And I can just don't have to have the drama about it. It's just clothes on the floor. And I can start to process that in a way that really serves me and allows me to learn and grow. Like Nelson Mandela said, there's no situation that's going to be a failure anymore. It's always like, oh, what am I missing? What's going on for my kids? How can I learn and grow from this? That's what we get to do when we start to see things through the lens of curiosity instead of criticism. We become empowered to make the changes and the shifts we want. We're also going to become really good at trusting in the value of relationship and connection and really believe, embody, and integrate this into the fibers of our being that all learning comes through connection and relationships, not through teaching a lesson and not through a punishment. It comes through connection, through relationships. When we get that, we can preserve the relationship always. Like even when we have to give a limit or have to set down a boundary, right? We can preserve the relationship and do those things because we understand and we've done the work internally and we've redefined behavior, right? We've done this, we've gone on this journey and we start to see how that's even possible, how that's not even just, it's really the lost, I feel like the lost patterns that we haven't inherited from our ancestors. But if you go to some indigenous tribes, that's what they're teaching. So it's this beautiful, really almost sacred vision of what these messes or these mess ups or kids' behaviors mean. And we get to start to see that for ourselves and it changes everything. Now everything's an opportunity, a gift, like, oh, a chance to learn and to grow closer. And I will say this, when we can go through a challenging experience with our kids, when they talk back to us, when they haven't done their chores or whatever it is, that's really like, oh, like they're having a meltdown and we can stay connected to them through that experience. That is one of the best opportunities to juice up the relationship. And think about just personally, when you've been having a really rough time and if someone has stayed with you and comforted you through that and believed in you through when you're maybe you feel like at your worst, man, we feel so connected and loved towards them. And that's what our kids are going to feel towards us too. And as we stay with them, even when things get bad, right? We're not going to be blaming our kids for our upsets. We're going to be looking inside about what's going on inside of me and trying to say like, how can I serve them? How can I be more kind and warm versus harsh and cold? The blaming stops, the shoulding stops, should-ing stops, and the confidence in ourselves increases, not in an arrogant way, but in a self-confident, like capable way. And you're going to start thinking so much higher of yourself. And you're going to see the greatness in your kids and yourself because your brain's going to start collecting all of that evidence. It's so empowering. Problems and mistakes and mess ups are now welcome. You don't try to make them go away. They don't seem like a side path that shouldn't have been taken. It's like, oh, that's where you went. Okay, let's see what led you there. Everything is working for our good, right? And we see this trigger as an opportunity to look inside ourselves and to become better. So the challenge is to stop, open, and stay when you're feeling triggered next time. Stop the default belief, the default patterns, the default reaction, open up to curiosity, and then stay with it long enough to kind of just see what's going on. Okay, I am so grateful for the time we've spent. You can tell how passionate I am about this, how committed I am to getting Connect Method parenting out into the hearts and minds of all parents who are wanting it so you can truly change and navigate how you're experiencing parenthood. And I hope that you've gotten value from this workshop. And I'm seeing from the comments in the Q&A you have. I'm so grateful. I hope you see a vision for what's possible. I hope you're starting to see the beauty of what you're capable of creating. And really, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So I want every one of you to start implementing and transforming this right now. Like that would be my hope. That would be my goal. That would be my wish, the desire of my heart. I want you to start developing these skills right now. And I want you to start getting these results and creating what you want for your kids right now. I don't want you to take years to develop the skills and shift into this deeper level of connection-based parenting like it took me, because that means it will take you longer to create what you want for your family. And with parenting, we only get typically 18-ish years with our kiddos in our home, and that's so crazy. I honestly wish I could start over with what I know now from the beginning, but I can't, and it's perfect the way it is. But I love that I have this information and that I'm able to show up this way for my kids, but also help other moms do it too. So many great comments. Thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciated all of you guys spending the last 3 days with me and taking some time to really invest and get curious about what you want to create for your kids. So we will talk to you guys soon. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, come check out League, my Connect Method parenting coaching program, where we take this material and we apply it using my proven formula. Head over to cmp.works/join.